Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. The first order of business today is the meeting of the Human Resources Committee of the Board of Trustees. And now I will call the roll. Randy Bufford, of course, present. Al Cornish.
I'm present.
Jim Rogers.
Present.
John Smith.
Present.
Thank you, team. Having determined a quorum is present, I would like to call the meeting to order. And of course, our first order of business is the approval of our minutes of the December 10th, 2020 meeting. Those have been sent out in advance. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any opposition and any approval? Say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
So the motion are approved and carried. Thank you very much for paying attention to those. Our next items of business is we're going to have two reports today, and we're going to bring in some different people from the HR committees as we move forward. And we're very excited. Our first is going to be an update on the Benefits Administration Committee, and that will be provided by Todd Neal, who is our Director of Total Rewards and Human Resources. So with that, I'm going to welcome Todd to the committee and turn the meeting over to him.
Okay, thank you. Yes, the Benefits Administrative Committee, as you can see on the slide now, was formed to serve as the formal plan administrator for our qualified retirement plans. We went through the process of an RFP to select an investment advisor that would assist us with the review of the plan. After the results of the RFP, we selected Camac Retirement Group, who oddly enough was in the process of a merger with CapTrust, one of the other firms that bid on the business. So we get the same team working with us that we talked to with Camac, but then now they're just a part of CapTrust. Once the contract was signed, CapTrust reached out, once they received our approval, to get plan data from both Fidelity and TIA. They have been spending a great deal of time going through the plan data, the plan documents, to get a good idea of current plan assessment. What does it look like today? We have scheduled one of 4 2-hour meetings where they will come back to us and tell us what they found. They'll tell us what they found that's good. They'll tell us what they found that probably needs some attention, and they're just going to bring back any and all recommendations. Once we get through that, which hopefully is mid-May timeframe, given schedules of the people on the committee, then we will prioritize what we need to do and make changes to the plans, the operation of the plans. Clearly, one of the important things is to ensure compliance with any and all regs as we operate them. So it would be late May, early June that we would probably have a prioritized list of, I don't want to say changes, but things we need to do to the plans to clean them up operationally, and if there's any compliance issues, to take care of those. And we can move to the next slide. This is the makeup of the committee as we speak today. Dan Durbin, Tom Hoy, myself, Mary Elizabeth Miles, and Sandy Russell are standing members. So as long as they're in the roles that they're in, then they will be on the committee. Should any of those people leave, whoever replaces that individual will become a member of the committee. And then we have 4 rotating members that represent faculty and staff and other constituencies. They have, as you can see here, from 1 to 3-year terms. And that's all I have on this topic. Are there any questions that I can address?
Todd, this is Jim Rogers.
Yes.
I worked for Hilliard Lyons, and I chaired our 401k committee for many years, so this is great interest to me. And at Hilliard Lyons, 50% of our people were investment-minded people, and the other half were IT people, HR people, operations, and did not have a financial background. So I think the university is more in the world of not having financial backgrounds for the most part. So I'm just a little curious as to what CAMAC is willing to do to come on campus and have meetings with staff and interviews to help people guide them in their investment decisions.
So currently both Fidelity and TIA do that. They will come in, they actually will schedule individual appointments, and think pre-COVID, they would come on site and meet with employees to help them with a financial plan. Post-COVID, they've still been doing that, except it's been virtual. So our employees have been, should they reach out, and I know Fidelity does outreach to participants as well, to get them more involved. You are correct. The majority, I say, inertia takes over, and if they're in a certain fund or funds, they just let it go and, quite frankly, don't think about it. Education is going to be one of the things we talk about with NowCap Trust as we go through, the findings they have and they bring back to us, because that is one of the things that I think we need to emphasize more. They do have a way to get financial advice. It's through Fidelity and TIA today. And what we don't want to do is throw a third one into the mix and create any confusion. So we'll talk about how we do that and how we can best reach, quite frankly, all of our population, whether they're savvy investors or whether they're just make a change and don't think about it for a few years.
Do you all have a limited number of fund choices, or is the door wide open?
Well, I would say the door is wide open. There's about 200 funds.
Wow, that's huge, because most 401ks, they're 14 to 20 would be very high.
And that is one of the top issues that we have already talked about, and they're going to come back to us with a recommendation on how we get from where we're at today to something that's reasonable and manageable, and more importantly, doesn't just confuse an employee.
Yeah, more options honestly is very confusing. And
Yeah,
it is.
It is. I agree with Jim. And would they also make some recommendations on some lifestyle funds?
Yes.
Because that sometimes helps employees a little bit easier to make some decisions.
Absolutely.
Yes, and we do have lifestyle funds today.
Okay.
But no, we need, I would say we need to clean up the fund offering and include it in that, because we do have some people that are savvy investors. We would ensure that we have a self-directed brokerage account so they can go and do their own thing.
One thing you can consider too is let's just say you limit to 14 funds. I'm not trying to tell you guys how to do it, but you could also do something called a window.
Yeah.
Where someone can go through the window and buy a different fund, but they're going to be buying at the retail class, not the institutional class, which you're offering, and they're going to pay that retail class share cost. So
that's right.
That still allow them to do that, but I do think it would be my strong suggestion we narrow that down.
It will be narrowed down. Totally agree with you. Okay.
And I agree with Alan, the target date funds, that's very helpful for some people, just to pick a fund that, is to the retirement date where they're going to retire, or 10 years after, or something like that. So that's all the questions I've got. Thank you very much for doing this. It's a huge effort. You had 14 responses. I applaud you. That's great work.
The committee did a good job.
Any other questions for Todd on the selection? And then I do have one while people are thinking that I would just follow up with. What is the term of the engagement with the advisor?
3 years.
Okay, just only saying because in the process you're working with the current people, but because there's been an acquisition, I just wanted to have some information around the length we're getting engaged here, if you will, because if something changes from the new leadership to what you thought you were getting with the team, it's important to understand that and so forth. So,
I agree.
other questions around the investment advisor? Great advice, by the way. Thank you, Jim and Al, for chiming in there. Great advice for the team.
Yeah.
And then I would look for a follow-up at some point in time when the BAC gets to finalization. We can kind of close the loop and round out on that.
Yes.
Randall, I have one question, please.
Yes, John?
I understand the rationale behind narrowing the funds, but a lot of staff and faculty have individual financial counselors and things and utilize a lot of the other funds. I don't really understand the brokerage, the self-directed brokerage thing, but I'm just concerned anytime we take options away from people, it raises a flag with me. And because I know a lot of people are in a lot of the different funds, personally, I'm concerned about taking options away from people just because other people don't take advantage of those.
And John, that's why you can offer the window, because they'd still be able to do that.
That's
Okay.
right.
All right. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Well, thank you, Todd, and I would echo the committee's comments for the hard work in sorting through 14 different proposals to find the right option. So when the committee reconvenes, if you could send along our good warm wishes and thanks, and we look forward to getting an update in the future.
We'll do it. Thank you.
Having said that, I'm extremely, again, blessed to turn the rest of the update over on some HR related things to our rock star of a Vice President for Human Resources, Mary Elizabeth. Feel free to take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Randy, and thank you, Todd. I appreciate you doing that today. I am excited to share with you all. I'm going to start with the Cardinal experience, which we start with every time that we talk. I don't think it's going to be any surprise to you all that COVID-19 is on the top of our employees' minds, specifically the vaccine and the post-COVID arrangements that we're going to have at the university. So let me just start with the vaccine. For those of us who don't know this, we actually have a partnership with U of L Health, and they have provided the university employees to have the ability to receive our vaccines through their process. So there are emails that are sent to our employees based on their eligibility directly to the employees so that they will receive their first and second vaccines, or, you know, now that we have another one on the market, possibly just one vaccine. Just want you to know that there's lots of discussion about that. Our university community is very thankful that we have this ability, as we know that there are many other vendors, or excuse me, other organizations that aren't able to do this for their employees, you know, and then on the flip side of that, there's a lot of angst in, you know, wanting to know when it is time for them to get their vaccine. So, you know, balancing those concerns certainly have been our priority. Our team that is led by Dan Durbin and by Mark Watkins, they have a call center that has been set up throughout COVID to make sure that our employees have quick access to get all of their questions answered. So just want to let you know that it is certainly top of mind to us, that as happy as we are to have this ability to have this with our with our employer, people are, you know, very concerned about when it is time for them to receive their vaccine. So just wanted you all to know that there's a lot of discussion around that. In addition, COVID-19, what is it going to look like? Now we're getting vaccines, but we all know that even though you have your vaccine, you still have to social distance, you still have to wear your mask. So there's still some precautions there. So HR and several other teams on campus, we are looking at what does that look like? And you know, we know that things will probably never look exactly the way that they did, but, you know, we want to be very respectful and very mindful of all of our employees that have families, that have children that are going through NTI, or maybe family members that they're taking care of. Certainly balancing that with the needs of the university and you know, what are some of those front-facing positions where we do need to have folks on campus. So just want you to know that we hear our employees, and we're being very thoughtful and planning to make sure that whatever transition we have is one that is best for our entire community. And then finally, I know you all know this because you approved this during our last meeting, but our retirement contributions are back to 6% and then 2% match. And so we're almost where we used to be. And I will just tell you that our team, our community, we're delighted. We are so happy that all the hard work that Dan and his team has done, and then, you know, all the other teams, you know, it's taken all of us to get there, but that we were able to actually give something back to our employees. So they're very excited about that. Before I go on, does anybody have any questions about any of these items? Okay, Jake. So I'm not gonna read these to you, but I promise that that we do have recognition programs that are much more formal around campus. But you know, during COVID, we learned that it's just so important for all of us to take the time to thank each other. And what we're finding is that across departmental lines, or even within different units, and sometimes maybe on a global, like you'll see here, like our IT team, people are just so thankful and recognize that all of us in our own ways have gone above and beyond to just make sure that we take care of each other and take care of the needs of the university. And so in our daily newsletter, which is U of L Today, it started out as a COVID shout out, but now we have adopted it, and you'll see that we just highlight those for you all. And Jake, you can go to the next slide. We will just continue to highlight those just so that you can get a feel for the things that people are thankful for, and just the recognition that we are just voluntarily giving to one another. And so I will let you all read that in your leisure, but just want you to know that I think that another theme that has been clear is that we are grateful, and that there's a lot of grace that we're giving one another, knowing that things aren't perfect, but we're all doing our very best. Jake? Community of care. Last, you know, when we met in December, we had 2 pages or maybe even 3 pages, and certainly most of those things are still in effect as it related to COVID. I have promised that we are going to always have reports on how we are caring for one another. And so these aren't all COVID facing, but want to draw your attention just to a couple of things that we're doing to make the lives of our community members easier. First of all, the state of Kentucky has notified us that there is a Homeland Security investigation that's going on with regards to unemployment claims that are fraudulent. And so many of our employees have been impacted by these fraudulent claims. So the same support that we were providing to our employees with regards to unemployment concerns, we've now switched that, and anyone on campus who has been either notified by our office or have received something in the mail at their homes that claims that they have filed unemployment, we are making sure that we take that information, we report it appropriately to the Kentucky Unemployment Office, and then provide them with all the information they need to take care of their personal security of as it relates to making sure that they have the information to stop, you know, any credit card information or any personal information with the credit bureaus, et cetera. Just want you to know we've also added that information to our website so that they are informed and can share with other family members or friends that they have in the community. But just so you all know, that is a statewide problem, and it is not anything unique to the university. The other thing I want to share with you, and I didn't list it because it was a last-minute ad, but most of you are aware of FSA, and those are funds that we can have that are pre-taxed, taken out of our paycheck each year, and we can pay for medical expenses or we can pay for dependent care expenses. And what we learned last year is that, especially with dependent care, with daycares being closed and then reopening in some cases, and there just being waiting lists, that we had to make some changes for our employees so that they could make the best use of their funds. What we learned very quickly as our March 15th date, just so you know, in a plan year, you have a certain amount of time that you have to spend those dollars. U of L has always had an extended grace period. So if you have dollars that are for the year 2020, you actually have until March 15th of 21 to spend those dollars. So we learned that the closer we got to March 15th, that we still had employees that had lots of money left on the table. And so with the legislation that came out in December, we made the decision to extend the funds from 2020 and allow those to be used through the 21 year. And then any funds that are they've chosen for 21, those can be used through 22 years. So our employees, actually, the vendor is working on making sure that they have those things changed in their system. So by the end of April, they will be able to have access to those funds to use for this year. So we're really excited about that and glad that we were able to pull that together. And then the last thing I just wanted to touch on as it relates to community of care is just some things that we're doing in HR to pilot and then hopefully push out to the rest of the campus to help our divisions and the supervisors in those areas to help their employees get through what we have found in this moment as being a time when people are getting tired and they're weary, and you know, even with the breaks that they may take or may not take, just that overall fatigue from COVID and all the, you know, we'd all been running as fast as we could. And so an approach that we've taken in HR starting on January 2nd when we returned was to think about ways that we can give our teams something to look forward to all the time. And so that might be something simple like picking one day a week in a month of no meetings and doing that for a whole month. So you have 4 days or 5 days, depending on how many how many weeks there are in a month, of having a day where you don't have to have meetings and you can just focus on some things. You know, something a little more creative that we might have is 1 week where we choose a day, 1 month where we choose a week where we work, you know, 10-hour days instead of 8-hour days. And then that last day will feel like an off day because we put our time in. Just want you to know that we have just been trying to think about something that we can always have out there, just so that we always know that there's something to look forward to. And all of it is managed around this idea of work-life balance and making time for ourselves and our families. So just wanted to share that. There are also lots of little fun pieces in that where we are engaging each other and nominating each other for our virtual hat based on HR excellence. But I might share that for you. I will share more with you about that the next time we meet. So if we can go to the last slide, Jake. Updates. Just want to let you know, at the end of the year, I told you that our heavy lifting is all about our compensation and total reward study, as well as our new system implementation. We are on our way. Want to let you know that our campus did a great job. We gave everyone a due date of March the 1st to get all job descriptions in for staff. And I'm going to tell you, we we're almost there. I'm going to tell you that in the midst of all the things that we had to do, people came through and they made this happen. And so I just want you all to know that this is the big and the longest piece of this process. And so the fact that we have this information now, HR will be able to do what it needs to do so that we can send it off to the vendor. So just want to give the entire university community a shout out for that and thank you, because you've been great partners to us. And finally, the ERP system, we have talked about this for a long time. We have our contract signed with our new vendor, which is Workday. We also have our contract signed with our implementation partner, which is Huron. And I will say that this is either the second or the third week of having daily meetings and starting this implementation about talking about the pieces of the system that we need and how things work. And so I want you to know that we are well on our way of making this change happen. And, you know, want to give a shout out to Rayon and his team who really did all the heavy lifting to get us here today. But I want you to know that this system change is going to change the university and how we do business. And it's going to change it for the good. So I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Well, thank you, Mary Elizabeth, and you can certainly see how engaged and busy that they are as it relates. And I just want to give you and your team a shout out for taking the lead in what I see as two very important things that you spoke to us today, all in alignment with, by the way, our cardinal principles, which are right over your shoulder. And the first and foremost is employee recognition. And we've discovered over the years that there's no better recognition that comes when it comes from a peer or across, especially those departmental lines, for pulling people together in a common goal. So we do appreciate your leadership and support of everyone that's making that happen. The second is your cardinal of care and being, not bureaucratic. Being responsive to timely needs. I mean, if you think about, and if you haven't been involved, and certainly our organization has as well, in the unemployment fraud issues, it's a real issue for every employer in Kentucky. And to be responsive, and then, just no other way to show people you're caring about them, with like the HSA change that you outlined, which wasn't on the slide. These details and attention to those details are fabulous. And then my only little ask maybe to have the Benefit Administration Committee or whoever consider is, we're now getting this recognition in the daily newsletter that you're having, perhaps, and these two things have a cost, so you'll have to work with your finance people. Perhaps there's some frequent flyer award program when somebody gets recognized publicly that way, that they would earn some cardinal points, or an L1C4 point that they could spend on a gift certificate, or maybe some cardinal memorabilia or shirts or what have you. So again, but more importantly, the takeaway from the efforts that you guys are doing is awesome performance, awesome job on behalf of the people. We have lots of great constituencies at the university. I'll have to be careful, but it always starts with our employees first, right? And again, that's who you guys are taking great care of them. So having said that, we could take any questions that we might have from committee members for Mary Elizabeth on the, which was a great report. And I'll close on that. Probably will close to sign off, but I wish you best of luck on your systems implementation. I hope you're as positive about a year from now.
Thank you, Randy.
Okay, do we have anything? I don't hear any. Having no other business, can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
And a second? Okay, great.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Again, thanks everybody very much. Great job.
All right.
Thank you, Randy. Dr. Burse, you may begin.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining this virtual meeting of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee of the Board of Trustees. I will now call the roll of the committee. Raymond Burse here. Sabrina Collins.
Here.
Mary Nixon.
Here.
Diane Porter.
Here.
David Schultz.
Here.
Having determined a quorum present, I would like to call this meeting to order. Our first item of business is the approval of minutes of the December 10th, 2020 meeting. Do I have a motion from a committee member to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Now we move on to our action items. Our next items of business are consideration to approve 4 new academic programs. Provost Vane, I ask that you brief us on all 4 recommendations, and then we will consider them once you finish.
Okay. I have 4 new initiatives, 2 degree programs, 1 certificate program, and 1 research center that have all been approved by the Faculty Senate at their meeting in February. The first is a certificate in horse racing industry business, and it's sponsored by the College of Business. It's a 9-hour online program that is designed to, in order to develop a mutually beneficial talent pipeline between the College of Business and the horse racing industry in Kentucky. Dr. Burse, would you like me to introduce the representatives for each certificate as we go, or wait until the end?
You can introduce them as we go.
Okay, so people who have questions about this, we have 3 folks from the College of Business here. Lynn Boyd, who is the Associate Dean of the College of Business, and program representatives Richard Germain and Sean Byrne. So if anybody has questions, they are here to answer them.
Any questions from any committee member relating to the horse racing certificate?
Yeah, this is Mary Nixon. I've got a question for Sean. Who are we? Of course, Sean, you know it would be me. Who are we competing with in terms of providing this kind of opportunity for students? I mean, I know kids that are out in Denver and some other places, but I don't know who all has these programs. You're on mute, I think.
Sorry about that. It's a fairly unique offering. I think the only place that has it is Guelph University up in Canada. Ours is very business focused, as you well know, in your familiarity with our program. We're appealing to a number of groups, both nationally and internationally, as well as former graduates and current MBA students for this certificate. And I think the key for us is that it's going to be an online offering. It's going to open it up worldwide, and we've already received some pretty good interest from around the globe, from places such as South Korea, South America, South Africa, China, for participation in our program.
Is it for graduate students?
It is. It's a graduate certificate, 9 hours, and we put a lot of work into putting the certificate together. We did some industry focus groups. We did several of them to determine the content, to make sure that we had the right content for it. I'm sure it'll continue to change as we go through the program, but we're excited about the offering and to see where it goes.
Great.
Any other
more questions? Go on to the next one, Beth.
Okay. The next one is the Bachelor of Arts in Computer Science offered by the Speed School of Engineering. This is a Bachelor of Arts, not a Bachelor of Sciences, so it is not part of their ABET accreditation. They saw that there was a need for technical jobs throughout Louisville. We've had conversations with the mayor's office and others about this need, and their program appeals to people who are interested in perhaps combining an economics degree with a computer science degree, or an English degree with a computer science degree, so that there is space in this program for 36 electives in a area of study other than engineering or science. And so that makes it a little bit unique. Again, this was approved already, but I have Dean Manuel Collins here and Wei Zhang here from the program if you have questions for them.
Any questions from any board member? Okay, let's move to the next one.
Okay, so the next one is a degree program. It's a doctorate of social work. We already have a PhD in social work, but this is a doctorate of social work, a more of a practice degree than a research degree. Its goal in creating this new program is to provide advanced education training and mentoring to master's level social workers who are currently working in the field. And this is a program that they can take while they are also working full time and not having to give up 6 years to pursue a PhD or 5 years to pursue a PhD. This again was passed by the Faculty Senate. Dean Jenkins is here from the Kent School, along with Vibhuti Sar and Shauna Golder, who are faculty representatives of the program.
Any questions? Okay, let's move on to the next one.
Okay, and finally, this is a research center for microbiomics, inflammation, and pathogenicity. And this research center is, we have a CODRA grant in the area or of study, and we are trying to pull together a number of researchers across the institution who are working on these various areas, which have been increasingly important. You know, the question of inflammation and its contributions to our health or lack of health, I guess, has been a major research focus, and we have a great opportunity, I think, to go after more grants as a result of forming this center and getting colleagues together who are working on similar ideas. We have two folks from that here representing the center. It's Richard Lamont and Terry Baudelaire. So if you have questions for them.
Any questions for anyone? Hearing none, we'll now go back and move for approval of these programs. First one up is the horse racing industry business program. And may I have a motion to approve the certificate in horse racing industry business as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstention? Motion carries. The next one is, may I have a motion to approve the Bachelor of Arts in Computer Science as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that it be approved. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. The next one is, may I have a motion to approve the Doctorate of Social Work as presented?
So moved.
A second?
I'll
Okay.
second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Then the last one is, may I have a motion to approve the Center for Microbiomics, Inflammation, and Pathogenicity as presented?
So moved, as long as I don't have to say
it. Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that program be approved. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody, those opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Thank you for that in terms of our continuing efforts to deliver programs that address needs in our community and filling out our curriculum. So thank you all for that. Our next item of business are the approval of revisions to 2 personnel documents for the university libraries and for the College of Arts and Science. Beth, will you brief us on those?
Sure. The first one is, you may remember that not too long ago you approved a revised university libraries document. We submitted evidently to you the wrong document, which was a draft before the final draft. And so there have been a few tweaks to this one, and including a few additional description of faculty rank names, some minor stylistic changes. They included dates in this document, which were not in the first document. And they clarified a few little processes about how a file moves from one place to another within the college or within the libraries. So they are fairly minimal, but we wanted to make sure that we had done this right and that you actually approved the document that they were going to be using. So I apologize for that. I didn't find this out until very recently that we were working with a different document. So that one is fairly simple, I think. The next one is Arts and Sciences. They revised their personnel policy for a few reasons. They removed some language that suggested that term faculty members who were not allowed any kind of leave of absence, and we do allow leaves of absences, or for in most units, if a term faculty member gets, for instance, an academic fellowship, or is invited as a guest lecturer for a semester somewhere else. So we do approve those. I mean, we're not paying them. Someone else is paying them, but we do approve those. And so they removed language that suggested that that was prohibited. The other thing that is new is that we have, I think really since about 2012, had pathways for many of our term faculty to be promoted. In the college, they have sort of some rules about who can get promoted to an assistant professor rank, and you have to have a terminal degree. We have some excellent instructors in the college who do not have terminal degrees. They have master's degrees, and there was no pathway for them to get promoted. And so last year I asked the College of Arts and Sciences to review their documents and to see if they could create a pathway for promotion, not to full professor, not to assistant professor, but within the rank of instructor. And so they have this document does that. And then item 3 is fairly simple, and I hope we never need it again, but it was an expansion of tenure and promotion voting modalities, which we used this year because people were not on campus always, so that people could vote online instead of just in person. And then finally, we had a slight revision to the tenure and promotion process for faculty members who have joint appointments either within the college, so 2 departments, so someone who might be joint appointed in history and English, or across colleges, so somebody who might be a joint appointment in arts and sciences and education, for example. So there are processes for those, and that's all that this is doing. So those are the 2 personnel document changes.
Are there any questions relating to the revisions for university libraries or for the College of Arts and Sciences? Okay, hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the revisions to the library's personnel document as described?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that be approved. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next, may I have a motion to approve the revision to the Arts and Sciences personnel document as described?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that those be approved. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstention? The motion carries. The next item on our agenda is really a fun item because it really talks about really the impact that we're really having in terms of what the institution has done. If you read the news reports, I think earlier this week, there was news articles relating to the number of Fulbright scholars that the institution has presented. And in fact, combined, University of Louisville has produced more Fulbright scholars than all of the other institutions in Kentucky combined, which is an achievement to be noted. And so we're going to provide an update on that. Dr. Charles Leonard is here with us to talk about those achievements. And Beth, would you introduce Dr. Leonard?
I would gladly introduce Dr. Leonard. We have been a top Fulbright producer for the last 4 years. And I think for 7 years in total. So the last 4 years have been very productive. When Neely said, what would you like to highlight at this month's board meeting, I said the Fulbright program, because it's one thing, we have some students here who you'll get to meet, but I think it's really important for the board to understand how much work our faculty and staff put into creating a Fulbright, right? It doesn't happen by sheer luck. And so I'm really happy that Charlie is here, Dr. Charlie Leonard, with his assistant, Dr. Bethany Smith, who both sort of reside in honors. Charlie is a special assistant to the provost who has a job that we would never create because it's so interestingly put together, but he does all the weird parts perfectly. So he oversees the Grawemeyer Awards. Many of you may recognize him from that event if you've attended in the past. He also oversees our Grawemeyer Scholars program. So he is the mentor, the faculty mentor for that group. He also oversees our Honors Fellowship and Awards program, which produces our Fulbrights and our Trumans and our other major national awards. And then he oversees undergraduate research. So it's a job by attrition in a lot of ways that as he's been so competent and capable in all of these duties, we have just given him more and more to do. So I am really pleased to introduce him, and he will introduce the folks he's brought with him.
Thank you, Dr. Bain. Hi, it's great to be able to highlight student success after all the bureaucratic heavy lifting that you do to be able to meet one of the student success stories that we've had. I'm going to speak a little bit about the awards that we advise for. I'll throw the ball to Dr. Smith, who will talk about our outreach and sort of the process by which we produce these student award winners, and a recent alum, Natasha Muncour, who is the part of the first sibling team, brother and sister, to both win Fulbright Awards. Natasha has a Washington, D.C. job now since she's graduated, and she'll talk about the prospect from the student point of view. And I want to point out quickly that Sabrina Collins has been through our fellowship process and has won a competitive award herself to the UK. But our little office advises for the Fulbright program. So Fulbright winners can be English teaching assistantships in something like 140 countries worldwide. They can get Fulbright support for a graduate degree in another country, or they can do an independent faculty supervised research project in another country. Last year we had 13 students get Fulbright offers. And as Dr. Bain said, that made the 4th year in a row that we were a top producer. This year, in the weird COVID year, our applications did not significantly go down. And we have 24 students in the current cycle who are semifinalists for the Fulbright Award, and I confidently and carefully predict next year we'll announce the 5th year in a row that we've been a top producer. If we don't make that, I'm certain I won't be invited to the meeting. We also advise for the Truman Scholarship, which is the living memorial to President Truman. We have 2 finalists this year for the Truman Award, so I'm knocking wood. Very prestigious award, which includes access to a nationwide network of Truman Scholar winners like Neil Gorsuch and Stacey Abrams, to name a couple, plus a $30,000 a year, $30,000 graduate school tuition award. The Boren Scholarship is funded by the Defense Department, and it funds study of rarely taught languages of interest to national security. And those students spend a year abroad learning a rarely taught language. We produce a fair number of Borens every year. We have students competitive for the Goldwater Scholarship, which is the most prestigious undergraduate STEM scholarship in the country. We have students competing for the Udall Scholarship in environmental leadership. We have Critical Language Scholarship winners, which is a summer rarely taught language program. And once in a while, we get a student win what we call the Big Brits, the Rhodes and the Marshall. We had a Mitchell Scholarship winner a couple years ago, which is they call the Irish Rhodes Scholarship. neither Rhodes nor Mitchell likes us to describe them that way, but it's the handiest way to do it. And our students go around the world, Spain, Uganda, the Czech Republic, United Arab Emirates, Hungary, Costa Rica, Jordan, Malaysia. The list goes on, and I won't. But it happens because for a few reasons. One is that you all, as a board, and Neely and her administration support merit scholarships, which bring, I'm not kidding, the best and the brightest here to U of L. And those students make everyone around them better. The provost's office and the president's office support us morally and financially to provide this counseling to our students. And it pays off every year, and it doesn't cost that much. And third is the process we've evolved over time. And I'll let Dr. Smith talk about our outreach and our process. Bethany?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Bethany Smith. I'm also in honors and in the National and International Scholarships Office with Dr. Leonard. So the awards that we tend to hear quite a bit about, like the Fulbright, happen toward the end of students' undergraduate careers. But we do begin meeting with students as early as their freshman year. And in fact, the first time many of them encounter us is during Welcome Week. We do work with students outside of honors and from every school and college in the university. And we're always doing outreach to various groups around campus to make sure that we're meeting all of the best and brightest students that we should be meeting and working with. So we do start meeting with students early on. There are competitive awards that are open to students in their first and second years, and we encourage them to apply for those because they're wonderful opportunities in themselves. And every application is good experience. Every application makes the next application a little bit easier and the student a little more confident. But even if a student is not yet pursuing a specific opportunity, in their first, second, or third year, we're still happy to meet with that student to learn their interests, start suggesting ways that they can pursue those interests, and kind of gain the kinds of experience that they find valuable, and refine their college experience. The things that we tend to tell students to become stronger fellowships applicants are really the things that they need to be doing to have a rich and well-rounded undergraduate experience. So thinking through their academic and leadership and service facets of their experience at U of L. If they're doing all those things and kind of exploring while also finding their focus, strength as an applicant is going to follow, but they are going to have a much better undergraduate experience as well. And yeah, I think Natasha will speak a little bit more on this, but every application, I think, asks students in various ways to reflect on what interests them, what they enjoy, what their values are, what their goals are, how they would articulate all of those things, which is valuable reflection to be doing, whether you're a senior or a freshman or many, many times in between. Yeah, so we want to work with students the whole time they're at U of L, help them do those things. We love when it results in awards, of course, which it frequently does, because our students do it so well and our faculty support them so well. But we also really enjoy guiding them and working with them through that process and watching them kind of grow through the applications that they work with. So I'm going to turn the details over to Natasha, who can speak to us from the student, applicant, and award recipient thrice over, I think, perspective. So Natasha.
Sure. Hi. Thank you, Bethany and Dr. Smith and Dr. Leonard for inviting me here. I'm very honored to speak with you guys today and share a little bit of my perspective. I definitely was one of those students who came to the Office of International Scholarships my very freshman year. I was a McConnell Scholar at the University of Louisville. My parents are alums. And I think the reason I came to the office, I hopped upon the office in the first place was because I was interested in, global studies and an international perspective. And I was hoping to get that from, Asian studies and the Asian studies program here. And even though I necessarily did not find that, I came across the International Scholarships Office looking for answers to questions that I didn't have. And so for me, it was the opportunity to learn about myself, the opportunity to learn about my interests, the opportunity to understand how my identity influences what I want to pursue. The very first meeting that I had with Dr. Condon, who's no longer in the office anymore, was, what makes you you? What makes you pursue the things that you want to do? And as a freshman, you know, people asking me these big questions about my identity, I wasn't necessarily ready for that, but it was a question that I needed to be asked of me. And I'm very, very lucky that there was somebody in that office to ask me that question. And from that moment on, I was able to, you know, plan out, you know, what I want to do, what I want to study, where I want to go. And so when I was introduced to Dr. Condon and Dr. Smith and Dr. Leonard, it was an opportunity for me to focus on myself and only myself and the things that I want to do and study and learn within not just education, but those things that impact who I am as an individual. So when I was applying for my CLS, my Boren, my Truman, my Schwartzman, and my Fulbright, the first people that I went to without hesitation, without a doubt, that I knew would always be there for me was Dr. Leonard and Dr. Smith and Dr. Condon. I think, you know, as an individual who has to think a lot about my identity when it comes to talking to people and discussing, you know, big subject ideas, I definitely got that experience writing essays, editing, discussing, you know, my thoughts on things, being able to talk and discuss about different issues with people in the office. For my Fulbright experience itself, I have, you know, I'm an Indian American, and for me, going to India and going on a Fulbright was pivotal for me to understand my perspective as an Indian American. And when I was abroad in India, and the first thing my kids said to me was, "Ma'am, are you white?" That was a really hard, almost difficult thing for me to articulate because it was not an experience I'd ever had. And it was important for me to understand that going into the experience, who I was as an individual, and coming out and understanding that experience, applying for a job. I would not be as comfortable applying and asking for things and telling people what I want and what I think I deserve if I didn't have the experience of writing the essays, telling people that in the first place. I think having this experience in the International Scholarships Office gave me the confidence to write. It gave me the confidence to be comfortable in what I believe and how I feel. And it gave me the confidence to believe that there was somebody at this university who always had my back, who always had my best interests at heart, and who helped me to succeed and only to succeed. So even now, as I work at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, which is an organization for civil rights, which is my passion, I had the strength to look for that and ask for that. And I was continuously, even in this job application process, going to Dr. Leonard, going to Dr. Smith, asking them for advice, you know, does this sound like a job that would suit someone with my, you know, interests? And they were open and honest with me. So I think, you know, not just as advisors in this office anymore, they are advisors of my life. And I'm very grateful and I feel very lucky. And I would love to see, you know, more multicultural folks come into this office feeling comfortable asking these questions, you know, and just taking that, what U of L has to offer in that and going forward with that. So I feel very lucky and very, very proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Tasha. That was really good. So. All right, Dr. Burrs.
I guess we're back. Any questions from any members of the board? I saw Neely unmuted herself as well, so.
I did. I'm just so proud of my students. That's really all. Congratulations. You did a great job, Natasha.
Yeah, you know, I think that, you know, for an individual who has spent the last almost 40 years selecting Rhodes Scholars and having interviewed students who have, in terms of universities having programs like this, it makes a world of difference. And just in listening to Natasha talk about how she came into herself through the advice that was given makes this all very, very worthwhile. And we're all very pleased and privileged that we have the opportunity to work at this institution where you all are doing that great work and producing great products like Natasha. So thank you for the hard work you're doing and continue to do as we move onward and upward. So.
Yes, thank you, Charlie and Brittany, Bethany, I mean, for doing this.
I'm
And
sorry.
In the chat, her brother is there.
Beth, I think John Chilton had a question. I saw a hand.
Yeah, I do. I just wondered what colleges within the university do these various people come from? Is it concentrated in one college or many?
So we do have a lot of applicants from A&S, but in the last couple of years, we have had applicants for Fulbright and other awards from Speed School, School of Music, College of Education, social work, public health. We've worked with a couple of med school and law school students. Am I missing anyone, Dr. Leonard?
Oh, no, I think they largely come to us in proportion of their size of the college. But we've been, public health, not surprisingly, has had very competitive students the last couple of years.
Yes, and we do work with undergraduates, graduate students, recent alumni as well.
Maybe you said it, but does that include the business school?
Yes, that was the one I was trying. No, I knew I was forgetting. Yes, business has been strong.
Yeah, and Natasha is a double major in business.
Yes.
Thumbs up, Natasha, to business school.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Beth, is that it?
That's it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you all again. Make us proud. At this point, may I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel matters pursuant to KRS 61.8101F?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're now in executive session. I ask only the trustees, executive vice presidents, chief of staff, legal counsel, and assistant secretary remain. For those of you dropping off the call, we will alert you when we have concluded the closed session, but you should also monitor the live stream for an indication of when we resume the open session. We shall now take the following action. May I have a motion to approve the president's recommendations regarding personnel matters as presented?
So moved.
There's a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstention? The motion carries. Having no other business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
There's a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We are now adjourned.
Thank you, Raymond. Diane Medley, you may begin when you are ready.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. We will begin our Finance Committee of the Board of Trustees. I will now call the roll. Diane Medley here, Scott Brinkman.
Present.
Raymond Burse.
Here.
Sabrina Collins.
Here.
And David Schultz.
Here.
All right. Having determined a quorum, I'd like to call this meeting to order. And the first item of business would be the approval of the minutes from the December 10th, 2020 meeting. May I have a motion from a committee member to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. A second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? Hearing none, the motion carries and the minutes stand approved. All right, the first action item, and we've got several today, is the approval of renovation to the School of Nursing building. And Dan is going to brief us on this.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you, and good afternoon. We're asking for authorization to renovate about 9,400 square feet of classroom space, basically adding classroom space to the nursing building on the Health Sciences Center campus. The cost is just a little shy of $1.5 million. It's $1 million in renovation, about $476,000 in, or $467,000 rather, in audiovisual and computer equipment to augment the learning process and the renovations. The project is funded from a $1 million donation, of which we've already received $500,000 in cash, and the balance will be paid in a combination of April and then upon project completion. And the other $467,000 for the AV will either be funded through future donations or from existing funds in the School of Nursing in their savings account, their departmental reserve account. And one of the key objectives of adding the classroom capacity is to be able to add class capacity. This would open up capacity to be able to accept about 70 more nursing students. So we think it's a very valuable and worthwhile and great project.
Okay, are there any questions from anyone to Dan about this item?
Where are the classrooms located?
I'm sorry?
Where are the classrooms located?
On the second floor in the nursing, it's called the K building in the nursing school, right behind the Able building.
So downtown?
Downtown, yes. It's a few floors below the dean's office.
Any other questions on this one? I think this is something we all know and believe, that we need more nurses. All right, so could I get a motion to approve this from any of the committee, from one of the committee members?
So moved. Second.
Oh, all right. Any additional discussion? Okay, let's vote on it. All in favor of this motion or this approval of this, please signify aye.
Aye.
Any abstention or nay votes? Okay, hearing none, that passes. All right, Dan, the next item is a renovation to the School of Medicine building.
Yes, thank you. This is basically a relocation of the speech and audiology department from their existing facilities in a building we call the Med Dent Apartments. Where basically it's not I would say, the most conducive space to function within. So we're going to move them out of that building because we're basically going to stop using that building. So we needed to relocate them. We're relocating them to the medical school tower, again, on the downtown medical school campus. About 56, almost 5,700 square feet is being renovated to accept them. At a cost of about $800,000, an estimated cost of about $800,000, and the dollars for that renovation exists in the School of Medicine in their departmental reserve account.
Okay, any questions of Dan on this item?
Dan, what will the vacated space be used for?
Nothing. The building's going to be taken out of service ultimately. It's not very desirable space.
Any other questions? So if not, go ahead.
Dan's description of the Med Dent building is overly flattering of its actual condition.
He's always an honorable and mannerly guy in all of his statements. So, any other questions?
Okay. John Chilton, I just want to alert you that you are sharing your screen.
All right.
Okay.
So could I get a motion and a second from one of the members of the committee for this item?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor, please signify aye.
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 All right. Thank you for that. Let's see, the next item is the 6-year capital plan. So Dan and Mark are going to brief us on this. Thank you.
Yes, I'd like, if you'd be kind enough to share the capital plan with the committee in terms of the process that went in to develop the plan and also the content of the plan. Mark Watkins, by the way, is our Chief Operating Officer, and the facilities planning and design function reports up through him. So as a subject matter expert on this, I think Mark would be the most appropriate person to brief the committee on this.
Okay. Well, thanks, Dan. So this one may not go as quickly as the last two that Dan spoke so professionally on. So the 6-year capital plan there's a legislative requirement that the universities provide a 6-year capital plan. And we are requested or required to provide any capital renewal or any type of capital renewal monetization that is over $1 million or greater. And they break, although it's a 6-year plan, we have to update it every biennium. And so the biennium we're working on right now is 2022 to 2024. So, and for some of you that are on the board here, you would say, didn't we just go through this? We did just go through this a year ago. So it was about a year and a half ago. So a lot of the data that you would see in the document, the Excel document that you should have as part of your packet, has a lot of the same projects that we had in there from the 6-year capital plan that you had reviewed before. There are some new items added in there because we have some new players on campus in the administration. So the capital plan is not developed in a vacuum. We seek support and advice from our student leadership, our faculty and staff leadership, VPs, deans, and senior administration. So we make sure that the things that we have in the capital plan align with what the overall mission of the university is. So there's two main priorities that we focused on, that we have been focusing on, and that we did in the last 6-year capital plan. It remains in this capital plan. The first priority is the capital plan focused on STEM. And then the second priority is capital renewal of the university facilities. those are our two main priorities, because we truly feel that we can't recruit and retain without having facilities that are adequate, safe, and aesthetically beautiful, right? So if we look at, I'm working off my sheet here, so there's a Word document in there that gives you a pretty good outline as to what the program's about, how we got here, and why we're going there. But so that document that is up on the screen, there is a good summary of what the 6-year capital plan is about, and what we're asking you for. So if we go to item number 4, it talks about our highest priority is upgrading our various STEM educational buildings. We allotted a $50 million pool of money in that bucket because it was too hard to pinpoint exactly all the areas that need to be done. But we are looking for, if there's a project of X in the chemistry building for $5 million, it would fall under this project pool. The item number 5 talks about the second priority, which is capital renewal. And that one there is listed in there as $100 million. And I can tell you now, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but we have over 52% of our buildings are over 50 years old. So the infrastructure is falling apart. We haven't done much to reinvest back in those facilities. So there's a backlog of deferred maintenance. We're estimating that as being over a $500 million worth of deferred maintenance that needs to happen. We clearly didn't request a pool of $500 million. We wanted to be a little bit more realistic. If we can get approval for the pool of $100 million and find funding for it, we will have achieved quite a bit. So I'm going to move down to the other projects, and it's more than just the 2 projects. We are looking at other priorities like renovating the School of Medicine building 55A, which is the towers on the Health Sciences campus, the renovation of the Health Sciences Center 55B, and then just in summary, there's over 118 projects on that Excel spreadsheet, with 94 of those we're hoping that we can find funding for in the next few years. So some of I'm going to move down to number 9, Jake. And so the 6-year capital plan includes projects for improvement for all aspects of the 3 campuses. The short-term critical needs, of course, is the upgrade to STEM and the capital renewal, replacement, and upgrades. A couple of other things we are truly that we're focusing on is a new construction of a College of Business building, the construction of the Speed School facility as well. We need to renovate the HSC classrooms in 55B, renovate the chemistry tech labs, auditorium, and fume hoods. The research space, we have a regional biocontainment lab that is in major need of upgrading, and I'll be presenting that later to Dan. And then our research space and all, there's a huge need there. So basically, the overall summary is 118 projects that totals about $1.9 billion. We're not asking for authorization, or we're not asking for funding. We're asking for authorization to for each one of the projects, so we can submit to the state. The first submission of the 6-year capital budget to the state is in April, and it is submitted as a draft, and we have an opportunity of tweaking that throughout the summer, with the final version of that being submitted in August. Any questions for me?
I have a question, Mark. Well, I actually have 3 questions, so I'll just throw them all out to you. First is for the first priority, the STEM instructional space. Being in one of those departments, in one of those buildings myself, how much of a dent in the need is $50 million really going to make? So that's my first question. And then the second question is, of that $50 million, how is that parsed out? Is that purely instructional, as in classroom upgrades, or is that the entire building, which would include dual use, that's instructional as well as research, as well as facilities, bathrooms, that sort of thing? And then the third question I had was more of a comment that if we want to enhance our R1 status at the university, we also need to invest in the research space in these STEM disciplines. So I want to put the pitch that we really need to think beyond just instructional, but the research capacity of the university should be enhanced on the Belknap campus, not just HSC and engineering.
Okay. So, David, there are 2 different things you'll see in the Excel spreadsheet. The pool of money, which has the 50 million, is for approval to spend up to 50 million to do exactly what you said. Some of it could be for bathrooms, could be for labs, could be for instructional space. That is really for the deans and the chairs of those of that specific space to determine what they want to have done. Okay, so what our team has done is sat down with each one of the deans and gone through what their needs are for their respective areas. Below the 50 million and the 100 million that you see for capital renewal and for STEM, there are itemized projects that are separate of that. So if there are specific things that need to be done in each one of these buildings that were identified by the deans and the chairs, it will be listed on that project list. So I can't really speak to the 50 million is just a pool of money that we want to have approved for those types of projects that were not identified as a individual separate project. Did I address all 3 questions in my one response?
Yeah, certainly number 2. I guess the first one, $50 million, do we have a clue as to how much money we really need at the university to upgrade the STEM disciplines to be competitive with, to be honest, high school labs? They are better equipped at times than some of ours on campus are.
Yeah, I don't have that number, David. I just know that the 50 million has been a number that has been carried forth for the last several years. We are in the process of conducting an updated study. In 2007, CPE had us do a study but it was more geared towards classroom space. It was updated in 2017 or in 2013, and we are working to get a new study done sometime in the near future. So I can't really say that 50 million is going to do everything, but 50 million would sure cover a lot of things that need to be done.
I'm sorry, Chair Medley, may I?
Sure. Go ahead.
The point that Professor Schultz brought up is 100% accurate. And certainly our EVP for research has been talking a lot about the need for us to invest in both our instructional space and our research space. And certainly 50 million will not cover all of that, but this is just our preliminary ask. We are thinking, and Mark has done a great job of this, and we will continue to bring in a master planning exercise so that we can actually look at what our needs are in a comprehensive fashion. And candidly, think of it as something that we've got to do right now to be competitive. But the hope is that we will continue to explore the needs, David, and we'll come back to this. This will not be the last time we talk about this. I can tell you that we're not alone, but if you look at our Kentucky universities, just the deferred maintenance runs into hundreds of millions of dollars. So the need is great, but I appreciate pointing that out because that's something I'm very, very mindful of.
You know, one of the things last year I presented in front of the state legislators along with the other state universities. We walked out of there and the president of Eastern said, you know, we just told the state that there's over $9 billion worth of deferred maintenance here in the state. So it's not just a University of Louisville issue. It's a problem throughout the state and actually throughout the United States as well.
And Mark, if I may add, in one of the last board meetings, we were asked to present some data on deferred maintenance. And we plan to do that in an upcoming meeting because we not only have the issue of deferred maintenance, but we think we also have a solution to address part of it. And we wanted to present both as opposed to just the kind of the issue or the problem.
So, any other questions about this? Go ahead. Sorry.
I do want to say one more thing. So our submission to the state, again, is our first draft. And we do have an opportunity that if there are things that we identify that need to be added between now and August, they can be added. And the thing about the actual list itself is, again, we're not requesting funding. We're requesting approval to submit the document with the projects on it. But the only time we would act on moving forward with any other projects is if we have the funding for it.
Thank you, Mark. Dan, anything else?
No, the other, well, just one other thing, and that is, Mark, if I'm not mistaken, this is number one, it's driven by the state that you have to have a capital plan, and it's purposefully general in that we want to try to make it as flexible as possible if we receive funding from either the state, the federal government, or the private sector, that we can address some things, and those will already be approved on the list, because the first hurdle to be able to get a capital project done is is it in your list? Is it in your approved capital plan? And that's why we try to make it a little more general than specific.
Yep, absolutely.
It's more of the right, we want to reserve the right to do it. And we may not know exactly what it is at that point, so we make it a little more general.
Right. Anyone else have any questions? I think that was a good and thorough analysis and explanation. So if there are no other questions, could I get a motion, a second, to approve the 6-year capital plan that has been presented?
So moved.
Get a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any abstentions or nay votes? All right, thank you. All right, the next is the approval of a purchase of the research administration system. And this is from the Office of Research and Innovation. And Dan's going to introduce Dr. Merton and brief the committee.
Yes. Before I introduce the request, let me introduce our Associate VP in the Research and Innovation Office, Dr. Kevin Merton. I think he's on here somewhere. Kevin, are you?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
All right. Thank you. If there are any detailed questions, Kevin is more than capable of jumping in and responding. But basically, this is a system, a pre and post award management system to help us elevate our research practices, both preparing awards, administering awards, and managing them in a much more efficient manner. And Kevin, would you like to give just a couple of high-level points in terms of what it is, the benefits, and I think the costs are pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Dan. So an electronic research administration system is exactly as Dan said. This is a cloud-based software platform that will allow us to administer our research activities here at the university. So over the last 9 months, we've gone through a pretty detailed RFP process, and we've identified this company called Cayuse and their system solution as the best-in-class solution for the university moving forward. Our plan is to partner with Cayuse beginning in May of this year to implement their cloud-based platform. And this will support a number of critical research functions here at U of L. So examples will be our faculty will have enhanced opportunities to identify external funding and to compete for that external funding. We'll have applications that will allow us to administer our grants and our contracts. And then compliance is very complex in the research area, so this will allow us to simplify our compliance activities. So Dr. Gardner wasn't able to be here today, but since he joined the university a year ago, he's been preaching that this is a critical element of our research infrastructure that we have to have as an R1 university. The Cayuse system is used by a large number of R1 universities, including the University of Kentucky, Ohio State University, and many others. So just a last comment, we think that this is very well aligned with the strategic plan. In particular, the Great Place to Invest initiative has several strategies around strengthening our research infrastructure and around enhancing our technological infrastructure. And so we see that this project with Cayuse and implementing their system is well aligned with our goals and the strategic plan. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Again, if I may, we talked about physical space. I can tell you that in terms of the information systems, we are even more behind. This is a big, desperate need all across the university, but this particular investment will have a very good return for us, and it's needed for our next steps.
Did we lose Chair Medley?
Yes. It looks like we did. So if we could have another member of the committee. Dr. Burse, if you'd like to ask for, since you just chaired and you're still in the process of that, in the mindset of that, if you want to continue.
The proposal is before us. Can I have a motion to approve this expenditure for this system?
So moved.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? The motion carries.
And next we have the approval of an exception for an estate gift. Dan, if you'd like to continue.
Yes, certainly. This College of Engineering is asking for an exception to the foundation rule that requires any donation over $100,000, state gift over $100,000 to be quasi-endowed. Basically, they would like an exception to that to be able to renovate some facilities on Arthur Street that will house 3 faculty, 1 who's identified now and 2 are under recruitment. They would house the faculty offices and they would house the faculty research areas. And in a way, this is like the nursing investment in that one-time investment in space to be able to increase capacity and leverage that capacity for external funding. So again, the project cost could be up to $300,000. There's a slight difference between the 265 gift and the 300, but that is we've checked, and the College of Engineering does have the capacity to be able to fund that should the project cost go that high.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Dr. Burse, would you mind asking for a motion, seconds, and approval?
Okay, is there a motion to accept the president's recommendation to approve this request? Is there a motion to the effect?
So moved.
So, second.
Okay, it's been moved and second that this recommendation be approved. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries.
Thank you. And next we have the update from Dan.
Jake, could I trouble you to project the budget to actual report? Yeah, let's skip over the words and just go to the numbers if you would. So before we jump into the numbers, a couple of points of reference that I'd like you to consider as we go through these. The first point of reference is about 58% of the year has been completed. So we've just crossed 58% completion point. And the second is when we think of last year's activity, last year we ended the year with a little over a balanced budget. It was just a slight surplus, but it was break even for all intents and purposes. I believe it was like 0.6%. So we use those 2 guide points as we look at where we're at through the course of the year. And through the course of this year, right in the center of the page, when we think about revenues and look at revenues, we have realized about 72% of our revenue budget. And so within that 72%, there's the general funds, and then there are the other non-general funds. The general funds are pretty much on track in terms of budget to actual. A couple of them are lagging behind last year, or lagging behind that percentage I mentioned, and lagging behind last year. For example, the hospitals related to timing, that's, we're not really worried about that. Auxiliaries are down a little because of some of the COVID-related suppressed housing and meal activity. And also some of the other revenues are also a little less than last year and down from trend because of some COVID-related things. A good example would be investment revenue, and we all know what's happened with the market and the interest rates. Our early learning campus, which is our daycare center, has had some occupancy compression. So some of those areas are a little less in revenues than expected, but the departments and those areas and those functions are also adjusting their expense base, so it's not flowing down to be a negative margin. On the non-general funds, there's 2 areas that are trending less than last year. The first of which is a foundation, and there's less revenue coming into the university, but the foundation reimburses us on a dollar-for-dollar basis. We spend $1, they reimburse $1. So what this basically means with the 5.8 million decrease in revenues from last year is we've spent 5.8 million less than last year. So no expense, no revenue. But again, it's bottom line neutral. It's margin neutral. The big story, and probably the most pressing budget issue that we have, is athletics. And again, that's COVID related. It's related to the occupancy, both football and basketball, and they are down from the prior year by about $59 million. And if you compare our revenues this year to our revenues last year, the entire balance of the $55 million decrease between the 2 years is totally athletics. Now, the good news is athletics has been able to offset a large portion of that decrease, and we'll talk about that in a few moments. But as we shift down to expenses, you'll see that we've spent about 61% of our budget, our budgeted expenses. A lot of decreases in personnel and in fringes. Frankly, most of that decrease is attributed to the pediatrics transition, where we physically lifted expenses from the university's books and transferred those expenses for the clinical faculty and the clinical staff to Norton. So the expenses went away, the revenues went away, the expenses went away. But in the prior years, there was also a deficit. So that deficit has gone away because we've taken care of that. Okay. So we ended the month of January with $135 million positive revenues over expenses, compared to about $138 million last year. Now, on the surface, it may look as if we're losing ground, but we're not. And reason being is this is a cash-based statement. And one of the things that we did was we issued about $5 million worth of CARES Act related aid to students before we actually received the award. We wanted to be proactive, and we knew we were going to get the award. It was caught up in the federal system, but we didn't want to slow the aid process. We didn't want to slow those benefits down to the students. So we issued over $5 million worth of aid payments to students in very early January. So that revenue for that $5 million is not in there. Okay, so that's one reason why it's dragging it down to be less than last year. The second issue is athletics. Athletics ended the month year to date through January about $8 million expenses over revenues, about an $8 million deficit. Typically, that number's positive. So those two things, those two factors kind of reconcile and bring us back to where we think we're still pretty comfortable with a balanced budget. Okay. Any questions on the high level? Okay. Jake, if you'd advance to the next slide. I won't spend much time on this, but this is basically just a supplement to to the first slide, and it gives you a little more detail in terms of some of the movements and some of the differences within the research foundation, and also some of the detail on why the operating expenses are less, what components are less, what components are more. But again, it's just a little more detail, a little more granular detail into what's going on with some of the numbers on the first page we looked at. And Jake, if you could turn to the next slide or advance to the next slide. Okay. We provided this this analysis in a prior meeting, and we think that it holds some merit in that it takes the data that we looked at on the first slide and compartmentalizes it in a little different way. It kind of compartmentalizes it into general funds, what's going on with the research foundation, athletics, the foundation, and then other department funds, so that you can see, if you can advance down just a little bit, Jake, you can see what's kind of what the operating margin by each one of those, I'll call them entities or segments, are. And if you could go down to the very bottom, this is, yeah, there you go. On the bottom line, comparing last year to this year, remember last year was a break-even year, so comparing last year to this year, you'll see that you know, the athletics issue really presents itself. Everyone else, every one of the other segments are doing better than expected. You know, the research foundation's $9 million better than expected. The foundation is actually up a little. It's just, you know, cash flow. But again, you'll see the significance of the budget pressures on athletics. Okay. Any questions on revenues and expenses? Okay. Cash. Frankly, our cash position is better than last year, and frankly, it needed to be better than last year. But I think you'll also be able to see the trend of the fact that we have been steadily improving our cash position over the last 3 years, purposefully improving our cash position over the last 3 years. So we're these numbers were quite low, you know, when you go back to 18. But I think you'll see that due to a better budgeting process, better monitoring, and just better cash management, we're getting the university to a much better place, a much more stable place to be able to build upon. Okay. So we spent a few moments talking about EULA and athletics a few moments ago. And again, through the end of January, they had about an $8 million deficit. And up until this point, they were able to really cut expenses and trim some things to be able to maintain some balance, a positive margin to the end of December. But January, it flipped negative. Left uncorrected, that $8 million number could go anywhere from 15 to 20 million. And the word uncorrected is very important because we are going to correct it. We're going to correct it through one of two ways. Number one is we always contemplated going to the market to basically look for some financing to help bridge and transition or float athletics from their own, basically a borrowing arrangement. We've just, so the committee is aware, we issued an RFP quite a while ago. We have, and we're currently evaluating 5 responses. And what we're looking for is some funding for 2 things. Number one, $11 million to refinance some existing debt that we have on some facilities, the ACC studios, some stadium debt, and also some seats that we borrowed some money for. The market's changed since we floated that debt. We think we can get better rates on that, number one. And number two is some of the debt covenants on one of the loans is pretty oppressive. And what I mean by that is it requires, the original loan was for $10 million and the covenant was you had to have $10 million of liquid cash at all times. Well, the principal on the loan is now only $3 million, but we still have to have 10 million. So, they're requiring a 3-to-1, coverage. And frankly, we think that might, we could probably do better. So there's the $11 million for the existing debt and then up to $20 million of working capital to cover the deficit, the operating deficit. We think that we can positively impact that 20 million, that up to 20 million. And I'll tell you about how we think we can do that here in a few moments with some CARES Act money. But again, we have proposals in hand. We're going through them. And if everything falls in line from a counter perspective, we will make an award in mid-April to a successful vendor or a successful bidder to put some bridge funding in place for athletics so they don't erode the university cash position and they maintain a good positive balance. Okay. And looking ahead, this just gets us through June 30th. Looking ahead, I just wanted you to be aware of the fact that the FY22 budget process is well underway for athletics. They're taking a conservative route in terms of their budgeting, and you will see more of their work product when we have our upcoming budget discussions with you. But I did want you to be aware of the fact that they have been hard at work in terms of looking at next year and the year after to make sure that they're in good shape. And speaking of the budget process, I just wanted to give you a status update on the university budget preparation. It's frankly been in place since January. We engaged last year a budget planning and monitoring committee to help us develop a budget, help us work through scenarios and gain some consensus and also exercise shared governance. There's probably 30 members of that committee from a wide array of representations, and we've engaged that committee, met a couple of times. We're working through that. We also have a tuition and fee evaluation and subcommittee working through what we might do with tuition and fees, what their recommendations might be, and also some other subcommittees that are looking at how do we fund certain activities across campus, how recharge rates and things like that. So there's some central work going on in terms of the budget prep. The other the colleges are not exempt from the work. We've gone to the colleges, and because tuition revenues represent about 2/3 of our unrestricted operating budget, we are working with colleges to develop their FY22 tuition revenue budgets to make sure that we know what the tuition landscape might look like. And last but finally not least, I wanted to provide you with kind of a timeline from a board perspective what to expect. We'll get the revenue projections back in April from tuition, merge them with everything else related to clinical grants, the entire kind of scope of operations. We'll also pull the expense budgets back in and in preparation for a May budget workshop. and work toward a late June board meeting for an action on the budget. And this, David Schultz, for example, I just wanted to let you know that this is a timeline for the board, and it is in addition to what the internal workshops that we'll have. You know, we typically interact with faculty, staff, or faculty senate reps, and John with staff senate reps to make sure that those two groups at a minimum understand what's in the budget, what's not, what it's based on, and things of that nature. So we try to get the budget in front of a lot of people and a lot of eyes for input. So, any questions on the financial status, EULA, and the budget process?
Diane back?
She was, but I think we lost her again. Unfortunately, her internet connection
So
not so great. But
any questions for Dan on the financial presentation? So you got one more piece, doesn't you, Dan?
Yes, there is. Jake, if you'd be kind enough to put the last one up. I wanted to provide you with an update on where we were with CARES money, relief money to help offset COVID-19 related costs. And I apologize for the lateness of this. I just sent it out today, but if you haven't had a chance to look at it and you have questions subsequent to this, I would be more than happy to help you and answer them. But again, we've received aid, CARES related aid and COVID relief aid from several places. And to date, we've received about $40 million since the beginning of COVID, which was back last fiscal year. So that $40 million worth of awards that we've actually received actually span 2 fiscal years, last year and this year. We have spent about $25 million of that. And of those awards and of those expenses, 3 tranches, if you will, have come directly from the federal government. And we've tried to highlight those individual tranches. The first of which came last fiscal year in May, and was pretty much spent last year. 12 million, and it was split 50-50, 50% for student aid and 50% for to help defray expenses due to alternative course delivery. It was focused. It was fairly narrowly focused. The second round we just recently received of $20 million. Although Congress approved it back in December, we did not receive the award until March the 5th. So we did advance the aid, we did pay the aid, and we've been reimbursed by the grant from the aid that we advanced back in January. It was $5 million we advanced, but we've supplementally spent about up to $6 million. So we've spent the $6 million for the student aid. That was a priority to disperse, and we are actively charging COVID-related activities since the award to that project. You'll see that there's only been about 89,000 posted. It's because it's a new award. We haven't had a chance to really accumulate charges against it yet, just because of the timing. The other award that's pending is the one that was just approved under the Rescue Act. And the number we're looking at for that is about $36 million, $36.5 million. It'll be split 50-50, much like the first tranche was, 50% emergency aid and 50% institutional relief. And the one thing I'd like to draw your attention to between the second tranche, round 2, and the third tranche, round 3, is the purpose of the funds. You'll see that the first tranche started out fairly narrow. The second tranche got a little more general in terms of what it would cover. And one of the key areas that it covers, that's the second and the third tranche covers, is lost revenue. And that's one of the areas that could impact our athletic issue, is helping athletics and helping our daycare center and some of those other organizations and activities that have had disruptions in revenue. So it's not just reducing or covering expenses, but it can also cover lost revenues. But we do not have the award on that, on the $36 million yet. So we can't spend anything against it. The final two pieces of our COVID relief aid has flowed through the state. It's federal funds flowing through the state to us. And you'll see that one of those was expired on 12/31 of last year. So we've already spent it, and we've already spent another smaller tranche of about $1 million, about $1.3 million from the state. So all in all, $40 million thus far awarded, $25 million spent, but we have a pending award of about $76 million that will help us not only through the rest of this year, but also for about another year beyond the date when it was awarded. So we're looking into March of 2022. So.
Dan, is it clear that lost revenue from athletics can be reimbursed out of these potential federal funds?
Everything that we have seen does not prohibit that, but we have a law firm on retainer that we plan that when we have questions like this, we go back for just one last validation, and we plan to do that. But it appears that at this point there's latitude to do that. But before we do that, we will absolutely positively check to make sure that's the case. And we've done it on some other things too, to make sure that we're on good solid
I think we ought to check, but in terms of priorities, that's not high, at least for me.
Mm-hmm. Understand.
Other areas of needs for the university has to take the priority.
Understand. And that's the plan. We've been pretty aggressive in terms of technology upgrades, classroom technology upgrades. We purchased student computers from these funds. So yet none of them, with the exception of some dollars that have gone back to directly reimburse athletics for every dollar that they've spent on COVID testing or disinfecting or gloves and things like that. There's been no lost revenue allocated to them. And we've also got some lost revenue in housing as well that we're going to have to take care of.
And one point of clarity is the time frame for which the lost revenue is measured. So it, looking at a kind of December time frame, it would not encapsulate the football season or majority of the basketball season. So unfortunately, it appears it kicks in more this start of this calendar year, but we'll get greater detail on that and value it for everyone.
With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions either now or later.
Thanks, Dan. I believe Diane is back in the meeting. Diane?
I do apologize, and I've heard that Raymond's done a fabulous job, which is what I would expect. Thank you. Dan, I appreciate your report. You and I talked about most of it, so I knew most of what you were going to speak about, so hopefully the rest of the Board of Trustees feels equally informed. So the next item, which I'm also involved in, is the U of L Health Dashboard Preview. This was something that's been requested by this board and this committee, and I know that Tom Miller has been working with Dan and myself and with Raymond also on getting this to a different level, something that we would see on a quarterly or annual basis. But Tom is on vacation, so I believe that Ken Marshall from University Hospital is going to be explaining the dashboard and walking us through it. So Ken, if you could take it away.
Thanks, Madam Chair. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ken Marshall. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for U of L Health System. And Jake, if you want to go ahead and share this document, I'll explain what you're looking at if you don't have it in front of you. What we've done is we've broken this down into 4 specific areas that kind of represent things that are important to the health system and that we need to monitor as we go through. So the first area that you're looking at here is quality. As we've always said, that if you don't get your quality right, it's hard to get a lot of other things right. I think the first measure is mortality, and that is have an expected length of mortality when you come in, and then we have an observed mortality when you are discharged. And that is in a good spot. 1 is normal, since this is an index. We are below, we are actually in the upper decile if you compare that across the country. That is just a UMC measure. This measure, we're putting the database, we're getting data in from the other parts of the health system. That will be ready to publish probably next month or the month after. Length of stay, always important about how we look at our throughput. We target with a intensity adjusted measure, which means how sick the patients are, around 3 days. During COVID, as you can tell, we had a spike in that. That is starting to come down as those COVID numbers in our health system reduce as well. I think the biggest thing, the next one on patient satisfaction, our target is to get within the upper quartile of health systems across the country as it relates to quality. And this is one that we're going to be spending a lot of time, not only the rest of this year, but into next year, trying to get right. The system is at the 25th percentile, which is not, I don't think anybody feels good about that. We are targeting the 50th next year, and have several items that we'll go into a little bit later on that I can explain kind of how we're addressing that. Readmissions, that is something that CMS pays us on. We're in a fairly good spot on that, and we're just starting to monitor that across the system. And then of course, nursing vacancies. I don't know,
Can I ask you a question back on the one you just went through? If the readmission rate you're looking for is 11.5% under that, right?
Yeah, that is.
So if
that may be a color coding error.
Yeah, I think there's an issue there.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Still fairly close. And this is the first time, these are system numbers, and this is the first month that we've started to look at system numbers on readmissions.
Okay.
Nursing vacancies, for those of you who aren't aware, staffing is, especially during COVID, has been extremely difficult. We have relied upon contract labor more than I've ever seen in my career. And the vacancy rate has much higher than it needs to be. Those are starting to come down. I'll go into a little bit of that, but obviously having full-time nurses that are dedicated to us provides a better quality of care for the patients. Okay, Jake, if we could move on to the next one. Go back. This is just, our big accreditations are Joint Commission for our inpatient facilities and CARF for our rehab facility, Frazier. We're all in good standing with those. And the next one, Jake. This starts to get into the mission support and the funds of how we support the School of Medicine and the university. There are several avenues that funds go back to the School of Medicine. There is mission support, which you can see we have Dan has an expectation of that every year. And there is also intergovernmental transfer funds that flow from ULP to the School of Medicine. Those are on track and budgeted for the year, so those are in good spot. Residents, we support residents across the health system. Those are above what we expected. We added some resident slots this year. And then of course our clinical research projects that we have going. You want to go to the next one? Finally, we have some community measures. The first is the physician office visits, and that relates to our access of care. Those physician office visits at ULP have been hit hard with COVID. We are opening up additional access points across the community through primary care and through urgent care. A few of those have opened already, but really in the next of this fiscal year and into next, we'll be opening up 3 more sites across the community. The Medicaid and self-pay and charity patients just gives you a sense of the number of patients that we serve in those categories that represent those in our community that are underserved medically or economically disadvantaged. And finally, we have the financials. I want to make a couple of comments on December, January, and February. We have our off budget, while we're positive, our EBITDA is positive for January and February. We are off budget by those 2 months. I think you can attribute most of those, probably 99% of that, to our expense on agency nurses. And we are in the process of reducing those rates and renegotiating those contracts to bring those rates down now that COVID isn't putting pressure on those nursing resources across the system. We're still in a positive position for the year compared to budget, though. And let's go to the next one, Jake. I just wanted to give you a sense when I talked about kind of how we serve that self-pay and Medicaid population, how we compare to other institutions. This is competitive data for fiscal year 2020. You know, I think in most communities across the country, you'll see academic health systems carrying a majority of the Medicaid payer mix load, as well as the self-pay load. If you would have looked at this chart 10 years ago, that self-pay number would have been up in the 25% range. Kentucky, as you recall, expanded Medicaid and flipped those numbers considerably. And let's go to the next one, Jake.
Hey, Ken, this is Mary.
Yes.
Do those numbers include all our hospitals?
They do. That's the entire health system.
Okay, because I would have thought that our numbers might have declined a little bit when we brought Jewish, St. Mary and Elizabeth, et cetera, on board.
We were, prior to that acquisition, and because of Medicaid expansion, the numbers across this market for everyone over the past, almost decade have hovered around that 2% range.
Mm-hmm.
That Medicaid expansion really equaled out everything when that happened.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks.
A few comments on kind of how we're dealing with some of those red areas that you saw. Patient satisfaction, we're putting in place some best practices on leader rounding and coaching for staff. We're calling patients who have been discharged to address the readmission rate. Length of stay, we are doing reviews on our length of stay with the CNO and the CMO weekly to catch patients who are over 5 days and may need some interventions. Labor management, I mentioned that's probably our biggest threat right now to our finances. We're reducing the contract labor duration, so the length of the contract. We're reducing the number of those contract agency nurses that we have, and we are putting in place lower rates as the pressure on getting nurses due to COVID starts to release. We also have internationally, over the course of the rest of this fiscal year, 340 international nurses coming into our system. And then in the May-June timeframe, we'll have 108 new grad nurses coming into our system. So our hope is with these three things, we're going to see a nice release. Although this doesn't happen all at once, we'll start seeing some benefits of this over the next 3 to 4 months. Some comments on community outreach. We're actually over the 6,000 free COVID vaccines administered, 60,000 administered so far, and we have some big efforts coming up in the month of March and in the month of April. I'm sure probably by May we'll be hitting the 100,000 mark on that.
You know, in Jefferson County, the numbers in terms of shots in arms for people of color absolutely stinks.
Yeah, and we are focusing on that specifically in our efforts. So we've reached out to several churches and combined religious organizations in Western Louisville and focused our efforts around there. We have an event at the African American Heritage Center coming up on the 27th. We're targeting about 3,000 vaccinations for that day as well. And so, yeah, we are well aware of that and trying as best as we can to get as many shots in the arms as we can for that population.
Do you have a plan with a calendar?
Those two that I just talked about. So the partnerships with the churches that we actually started earlier this month, and we continue every weekend. We are somewhere. We have on the 27th the African American Heritage Center, where we will have an event. We will have a broader event that we're planning probably at Cardinal Stadium in April. That we will start doing larger vaccination event there.
Do you have a plan with a calendar? Plan?
Yes, we do.
Can you share that plan with me?
Yeah, we sure can. We've got a spreadsheet that will list out all of the locations and the times of the locations. Happy to share that. Yeah.
You know, it's been very difficult in the community getting that, and that is a big issue that's out there in terms of where we are. You know, I understand that there are two other major providers in this market, or three others, I guess.
Right.
And they have a role to play. But in terms of the university's acquisition of those assets, or there was commitments made in terms of doing things in underserved communities. And right now, as a community, we're failing.
Right. I can get you that spreadsheet of where we are and where we've been. Of the where we've been, it shows you the number of vaccinations that we've given. And then it'll show you where we're going. But I'd be happy to share that with you to show you where we are.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Ken, that'd be helpful for Raymond to see. I will just add, I was on a call yesterday, and two people that are associated with a couple of the Black churches that you've been to were raving about the experience that they had. So I think what we've done so far is going very well. It's just, I think, you know, Raymond and the community, we need more of it.
Right. I totally agree. You know, we've got over 1 million metro area, and I'm telling you, we're going to get to 100,000 vaccines. So it doesn't take much to figure out the math that we're behind the 8 ball in vaccines. So I'll get that to you, Dr. Burse. So the last thing I wanted to, let me talk a little bit about access to care, because there are I mentioned that we are opening up primary care and urgent care locations in the West and South End. Actually, next week, we'll have an event on our Virginia Avenue site. We have actually physicians that we have recruited from that neighborhood that will be in that clinic. And we will, as the year rolls on, we'll be announcing other things that are going on in those medically underserved areas to show kind of how we're engaging in that area. Finally, I just wanted to mention a little bit on the KEDFA loan. You know, we had a $35 million half forgiven loan that the state approved when this acquisition was approved. We had a couple of major pieces of that loan that that we committed to. The first was the number of Kentucky citizens that we employed, and we had to keep that at 5,880. I'm happy to report that we've exceeded that so far. We're at just over 6,500, and then the average hourly rate, we committed to $35 average hourly rate of $35 an hour. We're at $56.25 an hour. So those two main components of that KEDFA loan, I think we're meeting. Our expectation was to meet those at the 5-year time frame. So I think we're a little bit ahead of the game there. Let me stop and see if there's any questions around that. That was a lot I just unpacked there. All right, and Jake, if we can go to the last one. I was also asked to share with you a review of U of L Health's workforce demographics and how we compare to Jefferson County and how we compare to the Commonwealth of Kentucky as a whole. To just translate that graph there, the red line is what U of L Health's workforce represents. The black line is Jefferson County percent population in those specific categories, and the green line is the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I think there's always room to improve this. While somebody can take this and say, yeah, you're pretty close for Jefferson County in African American, and but you still got room. I think we still have room when we address kind of the needs of our Hispanic and Latino population, and I just think there's always room to improve this. We have a work group that works specifically on this, and we are continuing to figure out how we can reach out to these communities better. Dr. Fitzpatrick has helped guide us along that path most recently. We have a relationship that we're reigniting really with Central High School that is kind of how we engage with the students in that high school who are interested in medical careers, and how we can work with them to bring them along as they advance their career, not only in high school, but in after high school graduation. So let me ask if I covered everything you were looking for, and I've got the takeaway of the vaccine sites that I will get out to you, or if there's anything else.
Go back to your page where you talk about the number of residents. Is the goal we set too low?
Go back one more, Jake. Those are a number of resident positions that we fund. We work with the university on those. It is, we get some reimbursement for these resident positions. And so as as a department comes to us and says, hey, I'd like to have an additional resident position for my department, we make sure a couple of things happen there, that we make sure that it works out from a financial perspective, so we're not hurting ourselves in the long run funding these positions, because you never unfund them once you fund them. And we try to make sure that they meet the educational requirements of whatever department we're working in. For instance, I can tell you that we'll probably be expanding our family medicine residency program because we're looking at placing a majority of that at Mary Elizabeth Hospital. And there's an opportunity to expand that, and it's going to be great for that community, and it's going to be great for the department, but it is something that we have to work with both the department and the health system on.
Yeah, I understand that, but you set a goal, and in some of them you're almost 2x. Well, you're over 175% above that. Is our goal too low?
You can say that it's too low. I think we did a good job of kind of opening that up this year and making sure there was funding for those. Of course, next year, once we finish this year, the goal is going to be 576. Once we get through this year, it's going to be bumped up to our baseline. And so you're going to see that change when the fiscal year ends.
I'm going to remember that.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. And I guess really the last one on clinical research project, just to clean it up, you don't have a goal. So why in the first 3 months did we put 15, 15, 15 down there? Because it's really not a goal.
Yeah, so on that one, we are just getting our hands around the clinical research that has come into this system. Mm-hmm. So we have clinical research that exists at the university. We have clinical research that existed that we didn't know about in the community side that we inherited through the acquisition. And so these numbers we're still, and understanding all of those takes reaching out to individual physicians and making sure that they sometimes identify what the research project is. So we're still unpacking some of this. I mean, I think it's important to recognize we're a year and a half old. So
right. The university is really the major driver behind that. So in terms of your having a goal, I guess I'd like to see the number of residents bumped up to way above there. So there's real goals for stretch for there. And then with our new executive VP research and all of that, we drive the other.
Yeah.
It seems to be that in terms of the number of projects or to year to date, we're doing pretty good.
And Raymond, if I could just make a couple of comments on clinical research. Tom Miller has just put into place an administrative officer with U of L Health, Shelley Denham, that will be over the clinical trials at the hospital. And we are currently working with the HSC clinical trials leaders and the U of L Health leadership to really come up with a unified approach to that and kind of defining roles and responsibilities and seeing how we can gain some synergies, stay in compliance, grow our clinical research, but we're going to be really taking a more unified approach. I think it's going to be fantastic.
Okay.
Hey, Raymond, just so you know, Diane sent me a text that she is completely frozen, so you're still driving.
Oh boy, not again. And I guess my last comment is on the demographic page when we say we're marginally below. That's like people telling me that we're almost there. Almost only counts in horseshoe, grenade, and atom bombs, and so we're neither any of those things. So therefore, we got to get there.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that point at all. Okay. I agree with you.
Well said, but no, I think this is a great start for we got some refinements to do on this and some things, but at least it's a good document for discussion in terms of where we are and where we go. So thank you for that. Appreciate your presentation and look forward to getting what you're going to provide me.
Yeah, I appreciate your feedback.
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, that's the last item on the Finance Committee's agenda. Is there? Let me pull up my copy.
That is correct, Raymond. We are ready for a motion to adjourn unless there's other business.
Okay, is there any other business to be brought before this meeting before we move to adjournment?
Chairman Burse, I think Randy has his hand up.
I did. Thank you.
I'm
Thank
sorry.
you, even though it's not my committee, health and U of L Health is a passion for me. Certainly, I commend you for the initial efforts here to pull this together. Like you say, you're only a year and a half in. Do we have a question for the future on some of these quality metrics that are what I would call non-operational quality metrics? Do we have a plan to publish those on our website and track, quality where the consumer fronting? I mean, some of this information is more of the business side for the board and others to consider. But I think if we want to, do our best from a consumer perspective, if we can. Are we working on that, or where do we stand there? And again, great job on pulling stuff for us to look at. I mean, trust me, I know it's been hurting a bunch of cats and going from one hospitals to, 4+ and the different initiatives. Applaud the effort.
Yeah, there's been on the public reporting piece, that really has changed, over the last 5 to 7 years. Early on, when the discussion in healthcare around public reporting, it was kind of pushed upon the healthcare systems to do their own reporting and publish it in their own way, and it was very variable. Since that time, CMS has a platform on Hospital Compare, which is commonly, the data is commonly filtered so you can look at it. So that is one avenue. Of course, there is Leapfrog, which comes out with the ABCD publicly reported data every year. And so we have moved from kind of, do you put it on your own website, to using those websites, which are commonly, the data is commonly filtered.
I think maybe I didn't ask the question the right way. If I'm a consumer and I come to U of L Health, is there going to be a quality page, that kind of showcases? I don't disagree, and we can argue whether CMS Compare is really a good, comparison, or Leapfrog, and so forth. And then also, I would certainly think that even, there probably is a compliance subcommittee of your board, but right, something that we would want to be tracking our own metrics in addition to what is publicly, to try to say we're the best. Right. Is really where I'm, yeah.
So 2 things. There is a quality subcommittee of the board, which we, have reports that go to that, to the U of L Health Board on a regular basis. And the answer to, is there something going to be on our website? Yes, there is. We are 2 months into, and really we're not even there yet, to amalgamating all of the quality data from all of the sites, inpatient and outpatient, so we can have something like reporting what the readmission rate for the system is. We haven't even got to the point of bloodstream infections or urinary tract infections and trying to amalgamate that. So I think we're probably 6 to 8 months away from being able to say we trust the data to put it out there.
Okay, Diane.
I just had a quick question. Thank you for the last report of the medical information. You mentioned a couple of things that I would like to have more information about as it moves forward. You mentioned something on Virginia Avenue, something that was going to happen, and also anything that pertains to Central High School. I would like to be in the loop if you send out a newsletter or something like that. That is an area that I know very well, so I would like to be, don't laugh, I would like to stay informed if possible, please. But thank you for the information today.
Happy to do that.
And Diane, could I also say something else about Central Hospital? I was smiling because I just couldn't wait to tell you this, but we're working with Principal Green on a guaranteed entrance to medical school from Central High. And U of L Health has been terrific in terms of helping to equip their pre-med room. And we've been working with Dwayne Compton, our Chief Diversity Officer, and then Eddie Miller, the Chief Diversity Officer with U of L Health, and working really closely with Central. So we've got some exciting things. We'd like to pattern this program kind of like the law school's program. So we really are working very closely with them.
Thank you. I'm the one person that sits in another seat that I have a really loud voice about Central High School, and they have been left at the gate for a very long time. So thank you for stepping up and making the disparity go away and bringing some equity to the programs at Central High School. I can't thank you enough, but when I see you in person, I'll probably give you a hug, only if it's safe, however. So thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Across campus, this is a big priority for us. I want you to know the business school has a relationship with Central, law school, and the School of Medicine, but it is definitely a labor of love for many, many, many people on our campus. I also wanted to say, Randy, that just wanted to quickly acknowledge that for the UFL Health Board, the scorecard is definitely a balanced scorecard. So looking at morale, how employees are doing, how do customers see us, what are our processes, as well as what are the outcomes.
Okay, are there any other questions? I guess that Diane's first question that she talked about the Virginia Avenue, I've been picking up in the community, there's some announcement going to be made on Monday?
I don't know if it's Monday or Tuesday. I think it might be. I think it might be Tuesday. Whatever I think the 27th is the date. We've been going back and forth, and so we're in the process of sending out those announcements and the invitations.
Okay. Any other questions for anybody?
And if I may, Chairman Burrs, what we are doing is making sure that we are aware of and that we keep people appraised of all of our efforts. And we know there's a lot more to do, but to be able to communicate what we are doing to benefit our local community. So hopefully you will hear much more as we move on. And Ken, I believe that we have recruited now 2 physicians who are African American, and I don't want to steal the thunder of what might be coming up. That's one thing. And then a second thing, Chairman Burrs, with your permission, before we adjourn, in April, we are going to be formally thanking at our board meeting Dr. Beth Boehm, who served us so incredibly well as provost. And then we'll also be introducing Dr. Lori Gonzalez, who'll be joining us as provost. So I just wanted to make sure that you all keep it on your calendars that we will be thanking Beth formally at our board meeting as well.
Okay. All of that is duly noted. Any other questions or any other matter any member want to bring before we adjourn? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion from the motion to adjourn. None of you finance committee folks want?
I
Adjourn.
second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned. It's been fun, folks. Thank you all of you for your hard work.
Thank you.